All right, so if you go ahead and turn your Bibles, we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 24, starting verse 10. Once again, that's Proverbs chapter 24, starting in verse 10. Today we're concluding our series on the sayings of the wise. This is our fourth message in the series, and so far we've covered the first 24 of the 30, plus a few extra, sayings of the wise. Today we'll conclude with those last 6 sayings, as well as the extra sayings of the wise that follow after it. In case maybe you weren't here for any of the messages, what are the sayings of the wise? Well, they're the fourth of the 7 sections of Proverbs. They're wise sayings that Solomon wrote down that every believer should know and memorize so that they could use them in their own lives and give them to others when they had need of them. And from all these sayings, God wants his people to know that they should live wisely in all areas of their life. Let's go ahead and have a word of prayer and we'll get started. Lord, I thank you for your wisdom in the book of Proverbs. Lord, I pray today as we conclude this series that we would just take to heart everything that we have learned in them. Lord, we be people who live wisely so that we can represent you well. I pray that the words that be said would be your words and not my own. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Hopefully you're there in Proverbs chapter 24, starting there in verse 10. We're on saying number 25, and it says this: If thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain, if thou sayest, Behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, does he not know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works? Here we have a very strong saying to start out our day. It's pretty poignant here. If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. It's almost worded here as an insult. It says if you faint in the day of adversity. Well, what is the day of adversity? Literally there, the Hebrew word carries the idea of a narrowness, a day on which the walls are closing in around you, a day of confinement, so to speak. It's a day where an oppressive pressure is slowly being placed upon the world, and the people of society are being pushed in this pressure and crushed. If you faint in the day of this pressure, your strength is small. Also carrying that idea of narrow. That word in the Hebrew literally means to be narrow or confined. In other words, your strength is limited if you faint in the day of adversity. Who's limiting your strength? Is it God? No, it's you. If you choose when the day of difficulty comes around you and the hard times come and pressures are coming to persecute and condemn and destroy, and you limit yourself in what you do about it, your strength is small. We see the severity of this oppression in verses 11 and 12. First we'll read verse 11. It says, If you forbear, in other words, delay, to deliver them that are drawn unto death and those that are ready to be slain. This oppression we're talking about is no uncomfortable thing. It's a life or death situation. This saying asks quite a lot of us as Christians. Because it's saying if you faint in the day when people are threatening to kill your neighbors and fellow countrymen, you're weak, you are narrowed, you are insignificant in your ability to do what God has called you to do. If your neighbor is being delivered unto death, that word forbear means to withhold. Once again, remember we talked about last week how this word withhold means to keep back what is owed to them. That word forbear means to delay giving what is deserved. So once again, this is talking about when this situation happens, you are morally obligated to do something about it. If you forbear, if you delay doing what you are morally obligated to do to save them from unjust death, murder, suffering, if you delay that, it says drawn to death. That means literally to be taken away or seized or captured and dragged to their death. Or ready to be slain means literally teetering on the edge of slaughter. These words are strong. This saying is not like your average daily saying. This one is intense because it says when the day comes where your country falls apart and it's a life or death situation and they're going to drag off your neighbors. I think the best comparison is Nazi Germany in World War II. That's the kind of situation we're talking about. People are knocking on your neighbor's door to drag them off to be killed. If you don't stand up as a Christian, your strength is small. Whoa, okay, I like the other sayings. I like the other sayings of the wise, Be nice. Don't steal. Hey, if your neighbor's going to be murdered, stand up and do something about it. You call yourself a Christian. Where are you going when you die? Going to heaven. So go stand up and defend those who may not know where they're going when they're going to die. Give your life for your neighbor. The wise person gives his life when someone else is in danger. They risk everything for their neighbor. Why? Verse 12 says, if thou sayest, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, does he not know it? And shall he not render to every man according to his works? Once again, going back to Nazi Germany, they made this same excuse. Behold, we didn't know it. We didn't know that there was death camps where the Jews, the minorities, were being taken and gassed and killed. We didn't know what was going on. We just thought they were being arrested. It wasn't a big deal. But there were people there that were willfully ignorant of what was going on. They had helped get people killed. They had done nothing to defend their neighbor from the slaughter. And they made the excuse, oh, we didn't know. And here Solomon says, do you think you're going to deceive God with that lame excuse? That when you saw the oppression of those around you and it was life or death, that you just stood by and said, well, nothing I could do about it. That's just the way it is. I don't want to get hurt. He says, your strength is limited. Your strength is small. That's despicable. That's disappointing. That's lame. Be a man or woman of God and stand up for what is right. Do not allow those around you to be destroyed while you sit by and do nothing. How many of you think, wow, I was not expecting this today. This is not where I was expecting this to go. But man, we're there. If you ever are in that situation, God save us all, because we're the first ones who are supposed to step up and help. But that's what God calls us to. The application here is a wise person will prepare themselves to take a stand on a day with great evil so that they can save those around them from death and destruction and stand before God unashamed. What is this saying? This is saying that when you stand before God, if you're in this situation and you allow your neighbor to be dragged off and murdered unjustly, that you will stand before God and God's going to ask you, why didn't you stop that? And you're going to say, well, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die. He says, didn't I just give you eternal life and you're worried about death? I know where you were going. You knew where you were going if you died. But you just made the excuse because you wanted to be comfortable. You didn't want to put yourself on the line for your neighbor. Do you know how much I put myself on the line for you through Jesus Christ on the cross? I went and died for you, and I said, you need to be like me. What did you think that meant? You think that was just a nice saying that, you should be like Christ? You know what Christ did? He picked up his cross and died on it for everybody else. Do you think when I said, take up your cross and follow me, that was just some kind of metaphor? No. If the rubber meets the road, what I'm calling you to as a Christian is to die for your neighbor if that's what it requires. God calls us to big tasks. He asks a lot from us. And I pray that we never meet the situation where we need to be tested on this issue. But if we do, we can't make that excuse. Behold, I didn't know. Pastor Zach told me. I wish you would have told me that. But that is the truth of Scripture. Let's move on to saying number 25 there. A little less intense. It says in verses 13 and 14, my son, eat thou honey because it is good, and the honeycomb which is sweet to thy taste. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul when thou hast found it. Then there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. Verse 13 tells us, eat honey because it's good. Wow, what a transition. You got to love these sayings just being put in a random order. Man, you go from, if your neighbor is being dragged off and killed, to, hey, go eat some honey because it's sweet and it tastes good and it's healthy for you. So yeah, verse 13 says, eat honeycomb because it's good and it tastes sweet. What's it saying? Well, honey is a good thing. We're talking about real honey, not the fake honey they have in the store that's not real, actual honey that's just added with a bunch of corn syrup in it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about real honey before the big corporations made it something else. Honey is good. Why? Well, it has antioxidants in it. It soothes sore throats and coughs. It can provide energy from carbohydrates. It kills microbes. And most of all, it says it tastes pretty good. How many of you like when you're sick to drink cough syrup? My wife had an incident the other day where she drank Dr. Pepper, and it tastes like cough syrup in Brazil. We don't like the taste of cough syrup. We don't like taking the medicine. Here it says, eat some honey, because when you have a sore throat, the honey's got antimicrobial properties. It will soothe your throat. It will help you, and it also tastes good. So what is it saying? Well, it's good, it has benefits, and 2, it's a pleasure to use for those benefits. Those are the 2 attributes of honey that make it a good medicine. So then what do we do with this analogy? Verse 14, so shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul. That is, wisdom is good, it has benefits for you, and 2, wisdom is pleasant to use for those benefits. There is nothing unpleasant about gaining wisdom, except maybe having to read a little bit. Some people don't like reading. Maybe that's the hardest part. But getting wisdom is not a hard thing. Wisdom is just generally skill in life that helps you get through your problems to live in a way that is more God-honoring. Getting wisdom is good. It feels good. How many of you say, I'm embarrassed to know about stuff? When people say, wow, I didn't know that. That's so cool. How many of you are embarrassed when you tell someone something they didn't know? No one is. It's a good thing to get wisdom. There's no downsides. There's no difficulties. So why wouldn't you do it? In the same way as honey has benefits. People are working and they're walking everywhere. The overconsumption of carbs was not an issue in this day and age. Hey, you need that little bit of extra energy. If you got a sore throat, take the honey. You get the extra energy as a benefit. There's no downsides. In the same way, there's no downsides with wisdom. Verse 14 continues. It says, so shall knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul. When thou hast found it, there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. In other words, there will be a reward. Literally in the Hebrew, it says there will be an end, and then it implies what the next word is. The idea being there will be an end result. When you get wisdom in the moment, there may not be an immediate result. Learning something new, you're probably not going to use it at the exact same moment unless you're actually researching for something you need at that moment. But gaining wisdom generally, it'll be maybe months, weeks, years, till you actually use that wisdom. And so Solomon here is saying, don't be discouraged by the fact you don't use wisdom right away. If you gain wisdom, there will be a reward, because there will be a day when you need that wisdom and you'll have it on hand. And it concludes there with, thy expectation shall not be cut off. The expectation there could also be translated as hope. The hope of a blessing for what you've learned. So what's this generally saying? Well, it's saying a wise person will seek to grow in wisdom today because they know it benefits their growth and it will eventually pay off with great rewards in the future. To be a person of wisdom is to know that you need to have a bit of an investment mentality in the future, and that the choices you make today determine that future. So if you decide today to sit down and grow your wisdom, today you might not get much done, but in the future, you're going to be able to use that. You're going to be able to help yourself. You're going to be able to help others. And so always be willing to expand your wisdom at any opportunity, because there's no downsides and only good sides. Saying number 27, verses 15 and 16. It says, lay not in wait, O wicked man, against the dwelling of the righteous. Spoil not his resting place. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. How many of you have heard this verse? I think we've all heard a just man's falleth 7 times. This is a general application that says crime doesn't pay. That's our modern version of this saying. That word lay not in wait literally means do not set up an ambush in order to rob someone. This is once again that same picture of the Good Samaritan going to travel, and there are a bunch of robbers hiding in the rocks on the side of the road, and they jumped out and ambushed him and stole everything he had. This saying is directed towards those wicked people hiding in the rocks. Do not hide in the rocks, set up an ambush, and attack the righteous man. And it says, do not spoil his resting place. This word wicked man could also be translated more loosely as a criminal. They would use it in a judicial sense of somebody who's been convicted of a crime. So, you criminal, what are you thinking? Why would you do crimes against a righteous man? He says, why? Don't do it against 2 things. His dwelling place, that's the place he's made his home, literally the place he has settled, and also his resting place. Now, you might be tempted to read this idiomatically as like a tomb. That's not what it's talking about. This is the place where a person would sleep or refresh themselves. It's more the idea of the place he rests, not his resting place. 2 separate ideas there. So don't go attack a righteous man. Don't go to his home. Don't go to the place he refreshes himself, and don't steal from him. Why? For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. Well, what does that mean? Fall in this idea is used two different ways. A just man falls 7 times. That fall is in the sense of to be thrown off of something. Like you might be riding a horse and you fall off a horse, or you're riding a cart and you fall off a cart, or maybe you tripped on a rock and you fall over that way. This is the idea of a type of fall that's not caused by the person themselves, but is caused by something external to them. There's 2 Hebrew words being used here. So a just man falls due to something outside of his control 7 times. It's an unexpected thing, but when a righteous man encounters a bad situation or he makes a mistake unintentionally, he will get back up, fix his mistake to the best that he can, and get back to his life as normal. That's the idea of a just man falls 7 times. Well, what about the wicked man? It says, the wicked man shall fall into mischief. Now, that's a different Hebrew word. This word fall is a failure due to one's own weakness. You might use this for a person who has a disability. Maybe they can't move one of their legs. Maybe they had their leg amputated. When they fall, it's a fall due to a disability. It's due to the nature of the person. A wicked man doesn't fall by accident. The wicked man falls because of his own evil actions. And that's the idea here. So you may surprise the righteous man. You might make him fall by stealing his goods. He might have difficulty. He might fall from external things. But you know what? When that happens, he's going to say, the Lord gives, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Take the things he has, rebuild himself, get back up, and do life as normal. But the wicked man, he will fall, and what will happen? Well, it says he'll fall into mischief. Literally, he will fall because of his evil. The wicked will make himself fall because of his own actions. And what happens then? He doesn't get back up. When you fall due to things that you're not intentionally doing, it's not as big of a deal. You can go through life making mistakes, and as long as they're just mistakes, you'll be okay. Everybody makes mistakes. But if you choose the criminal lifestyle and you decide to start robbing people at the side of the road, that's not just a mistake. Society's not going to look the other way. If you rob somebody, they're going to put you before the judges. They're going to put you before the court. They're going to convict you, and you're going to jail. You're not going to be able to get back up from that mistake. A righteous man doesn't find himself in those situations where he makes a mistake that he can't come back from. One of those mistakes that we've talked about through that is adultery or fornication. Those sins that you intentionally do. Stealing, basically the whole 10 commandments. These are sins you don't do by mistake. You break those, there are consequences for them, and you will have a hard time getting back up. When you end up in jail, you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your reputation. It's going to be hard to get back on your feet. But a righteous man will make a mistake 7 times to get back up, but the wicked will fall because of their evil. So what's the application? Well, a wise person will avoid criminal activities because they know a criminal life is unstable. And eventually, as an evil person, they would stumble in their evil actions and be unable to recover. That's the idea. Those who try to act righteously will have an opportunity to recover from their mistakes because they don't do anything that is unrecoverable. They don't even mess with that foolishness. But an evil person, though they may get away with their crimes for a while, if they continue to live in that lifestyle, one day it will catch up to them and they won't be able to undo what they have done, and they will be done forever. Saying number 28. Verses 17 and 18. It says, rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. I do think this one is placed here on purpose. It uses the same word for fall as the previous saying does. So it may be an intentional connection between the man who falls from his sin. While the righteous man doesn't find himself in that situation of an unredeemable fall because of his own actions, the wicked man will. And so we have a correction for the righteous man. You may think that the wicked man deserves that utter destruction. You might think, oh, well, that person who set an ambush to rob and beat that man deserves to be in jail for the rest of his life. I am so happy, and let's celebrate his fall. Well, the Bible tells us in the next saying not to celebrate the fall of other people. Well, why is that? Well, because it says the Lord will see it and it will displease him and he'll turn away his wrath from him. God is saying we should never celebrate when bad things happen to anyone, even if we consider them to be bad people. Whether we like them or not, we should be sad that a life has been ruined, that the consequences of that man's actions have destroyed his future. We should have compassion, even when people don't deserve it. We shouldn't celebrate when an evil person dies. We should mourn that that person didn't know Christ and went to hell. Never celebrate the destruction of the wicked. Here it says it will displease him in verse 18. That phrase in Hebrew is literally, it is evil in his eye. When God sees that action that you do, celebrating the destruction of the wicked, God says, I don't celebrate the destruction of the wicked. That's not something I do. That's evil. When God sees you celebrate their fall, he says, you're just evil too. You think they're so bad? You're so bad. You're happy that their life is destroyed. You're happy that they never learned their lesson. You're happy that they have consequences. Do you know how many consequences I let you get out of? You know how many times I've had mercy towards you, and you celebrate this person's error and the ultimate consequences of it. And so God says, it displeases me. It's evil in my eye. He says it is a sin to celebrate someone else's failure. It tells us that God takes it so seriously that sometimes he will withhold his wrath on this person because we celebrated it. Because we were so happy they got convicted, he'll say, you know what? I was going to punish him. But if you're going to celebrate it and my punishment of this person causes you to stumble in your walk with me, then I just won't punish him. How many of you have complained? Why doesn't God punish people? They really deserve it. Well, here's the truth of the matter. God may not be punishing some people because if he did, his people would sin celebrating their punishment. That's what this saying tells us. If you're mad that God hasn't got rid of all the injustice in the world and you are happy when unjust people get their punishment and you celebrate it, well, then you're a part of the problem because your heart's not in the right place. If we want justice to prevail in society, we need to make sure that justice first starts in our heart. And that we don't celebrate the destruction of the wicked, but that we mourn the loss of one who had so much potential for Christ. The application here is a wise person does not celebrate someone else's fall because he knows that doing so is a sin against God. Saying number 29, it says in verse 19 and 20, fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious of the wicked, for there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. That word fret not was a little different than I understood it to be. That word means to not be infuriated. Don't be infuriated by those who do evil. That's an easy temptation to fall into, to be furious about someone's injustice. But it says that. We shouldn't be infuriated by it or envy them. Why? It says there will be no reward. Once again, it's that same phrase, there will be an end blank. There will be no expectation of the future. The thing that you look forward to, they don't have it. They only have what they have right now. In the end, that little momentary satisfaction for their evil will be gone, and they have no future. So don't be angry at them. You have a future. You have hope. You have joy. You have an eternity with God, and they have absolutely nothing. So don't be furious with them. Don't be jealous with them. Their day will come. Why? Verse 20 says, the candle of the wicked shall be put out. Gone. That's their future. They might have the candle now, but God's waiting, and it's over. No more hope. What do you have after that? A future restoration, a glorified body, a life without sin, a fellowship with your believers, a fellowship with Christ, a whole new world to explore? Why are you jealous and furious now when you have something so much better coming when their story ends? The application there is that a wise person will not be angry or jealous because of those who do evil, because they know that they have no future reward. Saying number 30 says, my son, fear thou the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change, for their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the ruin of them both. This one is the original ending to the sayings of the wise under Solomon. It seems like it was Hezekiah who added the extra ones that come at the end. But Solomon left it here because he was a king and he could give some advice on how kings work. Because you know what? He did a lot of diplomacy between different kingdoms. His thing was fear God and fear the king. These are the two forces you should be afraid of and respect. It says, do not meddle with them that are given to change. The idea here is one who wants to take the government that's instituted, overthrow it, and replace it with something else. We don't overthrow God's rules, God's laws. Don't meddle with that. When you start changing God's laws into something else, that's a problem. Don't do it. But also when it comes to your kingdom on earth, don't try and change the laws of your nation. Don't try and overwrite the rightful ruler of your nation. Why? The Bible tells us that God allows those who rule to rule. Nobody comes to power without God's sovereignty checking it. The heart of the king is in God's hand. If someone is there and you don't like them and you think they're evil, well, then God's allowed that person to be there to correct the nation and wake them up from their spiritual blindness. If you love them and you did it, well, then good. Your nation's being blessed by God. But one way or another, don't put it in your mind to say, I'm going to overthrow the government and start a new one. Pretty strong conclusion here for number 30. Why? It says, for their calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knoweth the ruin of them both. The idea of their calamity is the destruction or ruin that they will cause. It says, who knoweth the rule of them both? In other words, you might go fight and join an insurrection and overthrow your government. You might think that you're helping, that you're going to make it better, but their calamity, maybe you get a good week or two. Suddenly these people who were so thirsty for power that they overthrew the government are suddenly going to show you their true colors. And you're going to find that they weren't so much better than what you had before. Their calamity will show up. Their problems will show up. What does that mean? Everybody who leads is going to have some problem. Every president of the United States, you're going to have things you like and things you don't like. This is just the way the world works. And you don't overthrow the president and replace him with somebody else and say, well, they'll be better. God says, how do you know anything? I know. You don't know. Their destruction might be worse. You think someone who wants to overthrow the government's being honest with you about their intentions? Fool. So a wise person won't do that at all. The application is a wise person does not join attempts to overthrow the government because they know that those who seek to overthrow the government are just as likely to become the country's next problem. So if you have anybody who says, hey, let's join together to overthrow the government, you can pop out saying number 30 and just say, hey, that's dumb. That's foolish. Let's not do that at all. Stay far away from it. And that concludes the 30 sayings of the wise, but we do have some extra sayings of the wise. You could consider this appendix number 1. Verse 23 starts out, says, these things also belong to the wise. Saying number 31, it is not good to have respect of persons in judgment. Really straightforward. These last ones are pretty straightforward. It's saying it's not good to have a bias towards certain faces in a legal verdict. If you're either a judge or you're part of a jury, you shouldn't look on the outward appearance of someone and judge them based on how they look, whether that be the color of their skin or the class that they come from or their name or their lineage or their family. Instead of judging them on external factors, you should judge them based on the case in front of you, the evidence that you have. You don't consider what they look like or where they come from. You consider the facts of the case. Well, why? Well, when dealing with matters of law, showing favoritism or preference towards certain individuals leads to you not giving them the judgment that they deserve. A lot of times you will find this still happen today, even in America, where one person commits the same crime as another, but one person spends years in jail and one spends a couple days with community service. It's the same crime. Why don't they have the same punishment? Well, they looked at him and said, you know what? I kind of like this one better. I'm not going to give him the crime. Sometimes horrible crimes only get community service and they don't even go to jail at all. It's a temptation to look at outward appearances, but that is wrong. A wise person doesn't look at outward appearances. He looks at the facts. Did they break the law? If they did, what's the punishment for the law? Give them that punishment and treat everybody equally. Application there is a wise person considers the evidence and severity of a crime when handling out a punishment. This also works as a parent, by the way. and does not allow his personal feelings about the specific individual to cloud their judgment. In parenting, this might be having a favorite kid. Don't pretend like you don't have favorites who you let get off the hook a little bit more than the other. There's a big difference between the first and the last born in the family. Let's be honest. Be careful that you don't make the same mistakes as the judges do. Saying number 32, verses 24 and 25, it says, "He that saith unto the wicked, Thou art righteous, him shall the people curse. Nations shall abhor him. But to them that rebuke him shall be delight, and good blessings shall come upon them." That word curse in the Hebrew literally means they will poke holes into. They will perforate you, so to speak. If you bless those who don't deserve blessing and talk good about evil people, people will perforate you with many holes. They will not like you. It says whole nations will abhor you. In other words, angrily denounce you. You will not make friends when you support evil. Deep concept, right? But apparently it's something we need to be aware of because there's a temptation to do it. So the idea is those who talk good about those who do evil will make themselves a target for anger by the general public. Whole nations will hate them, abhor them, and denounce them alongside the evil person. On the other hand, those who speak out against evildoers will be a delight and a refreshment to those, and they'll be a blessing for standing against evil. It says, "But to them that rebuke him shall be delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them." So you have two hands here. Speak good of the evil person or denounce the evil person. What does the wise person do? He says, evil's evil. I denounce the evil of this person. It says when you do that, you're going to find that a lot more people support you, and your life is going to be a lot better when you call evil evil, regardless of who commits it. The application there being a wise person calls out evil for what it is, because he knows doing so makes the right people his allies. Saying number 33 in verse 26, it says, "Every man shall kiss the lips that giveth a right answer." Isn't that a cute little one right there? This one you should be able to memorize by the end of today. Every man shall kiss the lips that giveth a right answer. And another way to translate this would be, many lips will kiss the one who returns a question with a straight answer. How many of you get that idea? Somebody who's just straightforward and honest. There are some people, you ask a question, they'll talk around it, they don't want to give you their real opinion. And that's exhausting. Like, you really want feedback. You really want constructive criticism, and they just kind of walk around it. And it's so frustrating. The saying here is like, if you're just straightforward with me and honest when I ask you your opinion, it's like, I just want to kiss you right now. I could just kiss you. You're so helpful. I just love it so much. That's the idea. But it's not just saying one person is, many people shall kiss the lips of him that giveth a right answer. You're going to have a lot of friends if you're just honest with people. Stop being fake. Stop pretending. Stop trying to be so approving of everyone and trying to be friends with everyone because you're pushing them away. Be honest. Be real with people, because when you're real and honest, people are refreshed by it. How many people today are walking around with a mask not showing who they really are? And you really wonder what their intentions are. It's refreshing and something you want to embrace when you meet someone who's just who they are and they'll just tell you how they feel. That is a blessing. Those who answer honestly are a breath of fresh air. When you hear their honesty, you just go, oh, I could kiss you right now. That's just, oh, it's so good to have that instead of fake facades every single day. What's the application? Well, a wise person will respond with honest answers because they know honesty is good and refreshing to those who receive it. Saying number 34 in verse 27, it says, "Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterward build thine house." This verse is kind of carrying the idea, from what I understand, of a single man who is now an adult. He's entering that phase of life in this culture where he needs to start building up for himself to have a family. It seems like in this context, he's been given a property from his family's lot. It's not been cultivated for a field. It's just owned by the family, and it's time for him to start working toward marriage and building a family of his own. So he's inherited the lot. He has some money. What does he do next? Well, the fool says, I'm going to build my house first. I'm going to go build a house there so I can live comfortably instead of, preparing my business first. Because he needs to go to the land, he needs to plant a field so that he has income to sustain himself outside of his parents so that he can get married. He still lives with mom and dad. His priority, though, is I'm going to move out and I'm going to get my own house first. Well, is that the way to do it? Let's look at it a little bit more. That word work without there, prepare thy work without, is work that is outside. So in other words, it's talking about work that is outside of your home. In this case, the work it's talking about is farming. So the temptation here is I need to build my house first so I can be comfortable, so I can have my independence, so I can have convenience. If I'm going to be working the field, wouldn't it be more convenient for me to live in the place I work? It sounds good, but what does the proverb tell us? It says, but you need to first make fit for thyself in the field and afterward build the house. It's more important to prepare the field for planting because he can be sure he can put food on his table and have income for the future so he can survive. You don't have to be comfortable. You need to have food. You need to have water. There are things that you need that are more important than a nice, lavish house. Now, you might be thinking, well, isn't a house important? Yeah, but in this day and age, you could just go buy a tent and set it up, and that was just normal. Some people always lived in tents. So the idea here is you don't need to build yourself a strong, comfortable house for you and your family before you have a family. That's for the future. First, you need to make sure you can put food on your table. First, you need to make sure you have a career. Before you worry about comfort, build your career. That's the idea. And sure, maybe it would be nicer to not be in a tent, but comfort isn't as important now as building forward for the future. Once again, going to that idea that a wise person does things now for knowing that he won't get the blessing now, but that he'll get it in the future. If this young man wants to start a family, it's important now that he can provide and feed his family before he can have a house to live in. The application here is a wise person makes sure they have their basic needs met before putting money and effort into the optional conveniences. Before you buy a new TV, you might want to make sure you can put food on the table. Before you buy a new couch, you might want to make sure you're up to date on your taxes. That kind of idea. Saying number 35 says, be not a witness against thy neighbor without cause, and deceive not with thy lips. Say not, I will do unto him as he hath done to me. I will render to each man according to his works. Basic idea here is don't lie about your neighbor. In this case, by saying he did something he didn't do. How many of you could say that my neighbors once annoyed me before? I think everybody has had that moment. When you live near people all the time, there's going to be some things people do that annoy you. Sometimes your neighbors do things that inconvenience you. Sometimes they're loud. Sometimes they're messy. Whatever it is, there's frustrations. So the temptation is when somebody else has a grievance against them, you can get an opportunity for petty revenge. Here, they're saying that somebody's accusing them of doing something. And in this case, you don't know if they did it or not. Oh, your neighbor, I'm looking for witnesses. I think they stole something from me. Another neighbor down the road, maybe. I think they stole it. Did he steal something from you? The temptation is if I just said yes, then he'd get in trouble, and I could have revenge on him for all the inconveniences he's caused me. And so a wise person will say, no, I'm not going to lie, but a fool will say, yeah, I'm going to get back at him. I'm just going to say yes. And then that person's just going to annoy him like he annoys me because they're going to be like, I talked to the neighbor, and he said that you did steal that from him, so I know you took it. And then the chaos goes on and on and on and on. But instead of getting petty revenge, we should not do that. It says, say not, I will do to him as he has done unto me. I will render to man according to his works. So yeah, neighbors can be annoying because you deal with them more than other people in your life, and you don't have a say in whether or not they're there, and that they may not be a bad person, but they are annoying. But don't allow that frustration to make you a bad person. Don't allow the temptation of getting petty revenge to make you evil. So what's the application here? Well, the application is a wise person does not seek to ever get petty revenge, but instead allows God to repay people for their actions. Don't try and take matters into your own hands. Maybe they did do something that was just wrong. We talked about in the first service how it's the glory of a man to overlook a transgression. It's a good thing to forgive. It's a good thing to let things go when you can. Be patient with your neighbor and love your neighbor as yourself. Saying number 36, and we're done. This is the longest one, though, so we're going to go a little bit over. It says, I went by the field of the slothful and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof. And the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. This saying comes from the writer's personal observation. One day he was traveling down the road, and he passed by a property that was not being well maintained. I think we can all imagine this. He looks at the yard of the property, and it's just covered with thistles and weeds all across it, everywhere you look. The whole property was just a disaster, and the wall around the property had big gaps and holes in it. And he just looks at it, and he's disgusted by it. He's like, what a terrible property. How in the world is this guy going to plant anything when he's got weeds 10 feet tall in his front yard? He's got thorns, which is going to be such a pain to remove because he didn't have easy access to good gloves. And then the wall's torn down. He has no protection for any of his sheep or his cattle. What is this guy going to do? It's going to be such a pain to fix it. And while he's looking at it and thinking about it, he takes a deep gaze at it, and he considers the kind of person that would allow this to happen. And what he discovers isn't what he thought he would discover. He was thinking that the person who did this was like a big loser, and he's such a horrible person, but he realized a truth, that it was never one action that led to this property being in disrepair, but it was many tiny little mistakes and procrastinations over time. You see, the wall didn't break down in one day. It wasn't like a cannonball went through it. The yard didn't overgrow to 10 feet tall thistles and thorn bushes in a day. You know how long it takes a thorn bush to grow from a sapling? It was just a series of small, I can do it later. I can do it later. I can do it later. I'll just take a nap now. I'll just take a break now. I've already worked today. And he realized the person that does that isn't all that different from me. What's he say there? He says in verse 33, yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. Sleep and slumber and a nap is not a bad thing. It's okay to take a nap, but the context is, when is it okay to take a nap? Sometimes we take too many naps. Sometimes we take a nap when we shouldn't. And when there's things to be done, we give ourselves excuses. It's been a hard day. I don't want to do it now. And as we continue to make a series of small mistakes, problems get larger and larger and larger until they're too big to handle. And he realized, I'm judging this man for not taking care of his property, but, in some areas of my life, I'm doing the same thing. Maybe it's not as visible as weeds and thistles in my front yard, but there's some areas of my life I've been neglecting, and what could have been an easy 5-minute fix, going and pulling out that weed, has now grown into 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of work. And while it may not have been a plant, maybe I didn't do something a year or two ago. And if I had done it a year or two ago, it would have been a lot easier. But now, because I procrastinated, because I said I needed more rest, I have bigger problems. He says, I'm actually on the path to being just like that man. He describes him in two ways. He says, thy poverty is like one that traveleth. That idea being somebody who has no home, somebody who's homeless. Or as they would say today, the unhoused. One who traveleth, they have no place to go. That's the kind of poverty experience. And thy want as an armed man. This is somebody with a shield. It's a lot harder to fight someone when they have a shield, because if you hit the shield, it's not going to do any damage at all. That's the idea. My want will be like a person without a home. When you don't have a home, it's really hard to get out of poverty. It's hard to get a job when you can't take a shower. It's hard to build up stuff when you have nowhere to store it. As you let your problems get bigger and bigger and bigger and neglect them, it becomes almost impossible to get back on track. And so the wise person doesn't allow a series of small mistakes to build up into a big one. He says, okay, what can I do today and just get it done? And he systematically takes these little things and gets them done so they don't become big problems. What's the application? Well, a wise person is proactive, and he works hard because he knows failures result from a series of lazy mistakes. How many people lost their jobs because of a series of lazy mistakes? They didn't do something big that made them get fired right away, but they just kept cutting corners here and there, here and there. And eventually the boss was just done with it. They said, okay, you're gone. How many affairs happen because of one day? No, it's usually a series of mistakes that chip away at that relationship. It doesn't just happen like that. You don't have these big life problems that just come out of nowhere. We act sometimes like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I had a tree fall on my house. Maybe if I had looked at the tree a little bit more, I would have known it was coming. I don't think I would have, but it's possible that if a tree fell on your house, you could be like, well, I had no idea it was going to happen. Well, it's been rotting for 10 years. There's a tree that was just down here that was rotting. We knew it was going to fall over. So I talked to the neighbor and said, hey, we need to cut that down because it's going to fall on the power line. You know what? We cut it down and the power line didn't get snapped. Had you ignored the tree, you come to church some Sunday, the power would be out. It'd be an idiotic, shameful thing for me to say, oh, well, sometimes trees just fall on the power line when I knew about it since January. You have to be proactive because most mistakes and problems don't come out of nowhere, but from a series of bad choices. Let's conclude today. We've said a lot. We've looked at a lot of Proverbs, but as we come to an end of the sayings of the wise, we should remember why Solomon collected these sayings in the first place. They're not meant to just be interesting or amusing thoughts. These are truths that are meant to be lived by and shared with others. The question for us today is not simply, do I acknowledge these sayings? Do I say, yeah, that's good advice? Do I say that's interesting? That's not the question. The question should be, am I living by these principles? Throughout these final sayings, God has shown us that wisdom touches every area of our lives. In essence, wisdom itself is about living the right way in the presence of God. A wise person will fear the Lord. He will speak honestly. He will judge fairly. He will work diligently and trust that God will reward every man according to his works. And that same wisdom will keep them from wicked revenge, jealousy, rebellion, favoritism, dishonesty, and improper priorities and laziness. The sayings of the wise call us to a life that is thoughtful, intentional, disciplined, honest, courageous, and most of all, God-fearing. So will we put in effort and respond to that call, or will we be like that lazy homeowner who says, I'll make that a problem for another day? God wants his people to live wisely in all areas of life. So will you choose to live wisely today?